Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out this evening. It's nice to see you all. My name is Ginger Olszewski, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our nonprofit Pat Conroy Center's Evening with Suspense writer Kerry Peresta, author of the newly released novel, The Rising, the second book in her Olivia Callahan series. In her endorsement of the novel, Susan Crawford, best-selling author of The Pocket Wife and The Other Widow, said, Kerry Peresta's stunning writing and multi-layered depictions take readers into the heart of a woman struggling to reclaim her memories and her life. Hooked from the first page, I was right there with her, rooting for her every terrifying, twisty step of the way. Kerry is the author of two earlier books, The Hunting, and the first of her Olivia Callahan series, The Deadening. She spent 30 years in advertising as an account manager, creative director, copywriter, and editor. She began writing full-time in 2009 as a humor columnist for a daily newspaper, and in 2012 she moved to the Baltimore area and became chapter president of the Maryland Writers Association. Currently, Kerry is a member of Hilton Head Island Writers Network, the Sisters in Crime organization, and South Carolina Writers Association. Locally, she has been published in Local Life magazine, Island Events Travel Guide, and Lady Lowcountry magazine. Kerry and her husband Jim have lived in Hilton Head since 2015. They have an ever-expanding flock of grandkids and 2 cats. This evening, Kerry will be interviewed by fellow novelist Dana Ridenour, a retired FBI special agent and author of the Lexie Montgomery series. Please join me in welcoming Kerry and Dana.
Hi, Kerry. It's so good to be here with you.
Hi, Dana. It's so good to be here with you, too.
Well, the last time I moderated, I made a really silly mistake. I was so excited to jump into all the questions that I forgot to ask the author to tell us about the book.
Oh.
So, where I don't make that same mistake again, please tell us about The Rising.
Okay. The Rising is about a 42-year-old woman who has survived a 20-year marriage to a sociopath. She has survived an assault that dumped her as a Jane Doe outside the ER of a hospital. She has survived a coma. They took her in and she went into a coma. This is what happened though. See, it's hard to pack the first book in and then go into the second book. So what has happened to this woman is that she was assaulted and victimized and almost died, left for dead as a Jane Doe. When her family discovers her and recognizes her, they rush to the hospital and she slowly recovers. But what has happened, because she sustained a traumatic brain injury, is that her personality has flipped completely upside down. So instead of the shy, retiring, lovely woman that they knew, that was passive, she is now aggressive and confident and darkly humorous. And she doesn't know what to do with herself. Also, she's totally lost her memory. The brain injury has just stolen her life. So now she's on a journey to find out what her past was. She finds out what her past was in the first book, and she doesn't know if she wants that life back because she's horrified. She realizes that she wasn't, she became a victim, but she didn't know what was happening because he was a sociopath, but she didn't realize that. In the second book, what is happening, The Rising, the title kind of tells you what's going on. She is rising to a new life, to try to figure out who she is, to try to figure out why she was that person in her past life, and to try to claim the memories that she lost, but also to make a new life with her new approach to life because of her rewired neural pathways.
Okay.
The question was, try to give us your elevator pitch. I don't know how to get an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is supposed to be 2 sentences.
But you know, that makes sense though. This is your second book. This
Yes.
is not the first book.
Right.
You write about your protagonist. What drew you to writing about the traumatic brain injury, and what kind of research what drew you, I guess, to the subject matter, one, and two, what kind of research went into writing?
Well, that's a great story. With my first book, I went to signing at a library, and there were authors in a U all around the edges of the room, signing books. So everybody was kind of, oh, that's nice, stopping by the tables, and oh, that's nice, picking them up, but nobody was buying anything except this one woman. So this one woman's table, there was a flock of people around there. And I'm 30 minutes later, and no sales. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna find out what's going on with this woman. So I made a beeline over to her table. She told me this story. I said, what is it about you that attracts everybody like bees to honey? And she said, well, funny thing happened. I was in a car wreck and almost died. I was in a coma for a year. I was not expected to live, but I did. And when I arose, I was like this. She said, I used to be really shy, but now all I want to do is talk to people, and I want to check them up, and I just want to live and grab life. And people were really responding to this, and I thought, that was it for me. I was like, that's the best character ever, because that's what happened to her, was her brain was rewired by her injury, and it made her a different person. So that is where the story is.
So in other words, you pulled a Pat Conroy, you stole her story, right?
Yes, and I talk about it all the time. I can't remember her name, or I would contact her and let her read the book. Yeah, but I did tons of research on neurological injuries, and the brain is just in a wonderful plastic organ that can recreate itself in thousands of ways. And even the neurosurgeons cannot predict how the recovery will go. So I'm thinking, I can do anything I want with this character.
It's wide open.
Yeah.
So when somebody closes the book, what would you like them to take away from reading the book? Both books, actually, the first and the second. What's the message that you want people to get?
Well, the first thing I do when I write a book is I come up with a theme. So the deadening is about overcoming, but she didn't even really know she had an issue. She learned that through the assault. So in a way, the assault changed her life in a very good way and opened her eyes to her passivity and to giving her autonomy to an abusive husband. The second book, though, is rising. She's evolving. She's learning what to do. She wants to have a career now. He would never let her work. So her kids are up, they're going to college, and she's trying things out. She's spreading her wings, and she's trying to figure out who she was. But the problem is, married to a sociopath who hates her guts now because she's confident in standing up to him, and he's in prison by the time this book comes out. He's in prison. She doesn't realize that being married to someone who is evil and now criminal creates all kinds of consequences. So she's battling those consequences, and just horrible things are happening. And so she's having to fight all this stuff, and she's becoming more confident and more aggressive as she goes. And so the rising, I just talk too much. I'll just stop me if I don't shut up. But the rising, she is rising to the occasion. She is rising to her new life. And what I want people to take away from it, there's no mistake it's too big not to start over and to grab life and to rise.
All right, that's great. So you're writing a series now.
Yes.
As somebody who writes a series, I realize that there are challenges that come along with writing a series. So have you encountered some challenges, and if so, what were they? And is there a third book in the series coming our way?
I answered that question earlier, and I'm trying to think. So many challenges. Mainly moving the story forward in a series. The character, instead of evolving in one book, where you have your character arc and it's finished in a nice little package in one book, he's nodding like he's written before that he understands. He's like going, yeah. And so now the character's arc has to go over several books. So I want to make sure that I don't slow down the pace. I want to make sure that her evolution is authentic. I want to remember what I wrote in the previous book. I just now found out that you got to keep a character Bible.
Yes.
Right?
I love
So,
that character Bible.
because if you forget that character's eyes were blue and you make him breathe in the second book, you will hear about
Somebody will
it.
catch it. And you'll hear about it on email.
are the kind of things that are challenging to me. But on the other hand, did you ask me about the good things?
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good thing.
Okay. So the good things are I don't have to reinvent the characters. So I get to delve into their backgrounds and their histories. I get to introduce new characters. I get to kill off characters also. So that's been interesting. So
So you kill off a character that everybody loves, and we'll hear about that too.
I think everybody does love this character, but it also research. I don't have to do all this new research on the next book. I've already done a lot of the research, and so it's just expanding upon what I've already done.
So there is a next book.
Yes. Yes, number 3, I'm working on it now. I'm at 60,000 words. 80,000 words is usually a book. And the first draft is just getting the story down. There's probably more information than you want, but it's just getting it down. But then the hard work comes in refining and editing and cutting off fat and making sure that you keep the plot points in place and that it is riveting and action. Because suspense, the genre is psychological suspense that I write in, and or domestic suspense. And so there is action, action, action. There's not a lot of little frilly descriptions and things like that that we both despise. In certain books that have a lot of background and that type of thing. This is a lot about character development and action and excitement.
Well, speaking of your character, how much of you is in Olivia?
It's just such a trick question.
I know, it's a fun question though.
And you would agree with this as a fellow author. I think all authors put facets of themselves into their books, into their protagonists. Thus far, I've only written female protagonists. I kind of think about writing a male protagonist. That would be a different side of me and would probably be interesting. But for me, there's a lot of me in this, and the good and the bad. So I have had the fortune or the misfortune to go through some very hard emotional things in my life. And although they were traumatic and horrible and hard at the time, boy, did it give me great subject matter for my books. So I can work out stuff that happened in my past and make it turn out better or make it turn out worse, which is also fun in suspense.
It can be very therapeutic too.
It is cathartic as heck,
Yeah.
especially with the male aspect. So, because my antagonists, my villains are very over the top, soulless. It's the best for
sometimes writing those villains is fun. I mean, do you prefer to write the protagonist or do you like writing the villain?
I really like writing villain.
I do too.
That says something about us.
Yeah, it probably does. But writing villain is fun. And
It is fun.
that has to be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you were in advertising for what, 30 years? So that seems like a big change to go from advertising to writing suspense and mystery. How did that happen, and what drew you to writing suspense?
Advertising was because I majored in commercial art at school, and I just kind of fell into that. And so I was a production artist on the drawing tables before computers, before all of that. I was a typesetter. I was an account manager as well, because it paid so much better than being a production artist. And eventually I became the go-to person for copy. It was so easy for me to write copy. I never thought about writing a book at that point in my 20s and 30s. I wish I had, because I would have probably taken some writing classes and different things and expedited this whole journey. But it has served me so well because I learned how to write persuasive copy, because it was sales copy. It was blurbs for the packaging and advertising and all of that. And so I learned how to persuade, and also just interfacing with people. I was in sales at that point with advertising, and so it made me confident in talking to people and presenting something. Because and I didn't even know this when I started writing, I just knew that I wanted to do that. I needed to get words on a page, and I was reading some stuff while up where I'm going, I can do as good as that. I know that I can, maybe better than that. It just made me mad sometimes, some of the stuff I was reading, so I just went ahead and started writing. Yes, but what I was going to say is an author's job, I don't know if y'all know this, you may, but 50% of it is marketing. Because the publishers do not help you anymore. Unless it's one of the big five, and they pour a lot of money into marketing the first book. But if they don't meet their quota and make a decent amount of money off that first book, you get nothing for the second and third and fourth books, and probably dropped. So it's very vicious. But you have to market your book, and that's one of the big reasons a publisher will pick you up nowadays, is if you gotta have a huge social media footprint and a decent newsletter and all these things in place before they'll even look at you. So it served me well in that way.
I was gonna say, that's great.
Yes.
I'm ready to hire you as my advocate.
I can give you tips for sure.
So, do you read suspense? Is that why you were drawn to write suspense?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So,
Absolutely. The Lee Childs of the world and the Brits write great suspense. And I cut my teeth on Sue Grafton, and she's a mystery, but she's not cozy.
Right.
Right. So Sue Grafton was my first love. I started reading her in the 80s and 90s, and I just always would gravitate toward those darker books. I didn't go dark, Dean Koontz, Stephen King dark, but I was in the middle there between Sue Grafton.
Okay. Well, and a lot of people, I don't think, understand what cozies are, so maybe.
Why don't you explain to them?
Well, cozies are kind of like the title. They don't have a lot of blood and guts and violence in them. It's more of an Agatha Christie. It's more of a
Murder,
mystery
She Wrote.
without
That's a
all
cozy.
the blood and cuts. And
It must have a cat.
yes.
And teeth.
And they usually start out with like a murder. But yeah, so there's a big
There
difference.
must be a murder also. And suspense, you don't have to have a murder. It's more about the psychological aspect of it, and there's always crime involved, but you don't have to have a murder. So the mystery is about the riddle. It's all about the clues, like the game of Clue. But suspense is about the evolution of the character and why this crime has happened.
So who do you read if you had to pick your favorite, like, suspense mystery?
Right now it's Louise Jensen.
Okay.
She is a British author that has exploded onto the scene, and she is just fabulous. The way that she creates that. Suspense is all about creating that cliffhanger at the end of every chapter, and it's an art. And so she does it so well. So she's probably my current favorite. Victor Mevos is another one. Do you know him? Yeah?
No, I've heard the name, but I've not read as of yet.
Yes. I have several. I'd have to just make a list.
Well, what would you be considered, if you had to pick your last great read, what would you consider that, your last great book that you read, that you're gonna recommend to everybody?
Lee Childs, The Temptation. No. Who wrote that one? The Temptation. I can't remember the author. Yeah. Anyway, I have to think about it. It's hard. That's a terrible question. I need to write down the authors because I lose them. I remember the story, but I lose the authors. They all blend together.
So, in my experience, these books would be great for book clubs. And the book clubs that I go to, there's usually a little bit of adult beverage that goes on.
Yes.
In book content.
Yes.
So if you had to pick an adult beverage that would pair nicely with your books, what would it be?
Wine, and more wine. So in my second book, red.
How did you always say you read away?
So I've created for Olivia, for my protagonist, who is stumbling through her life, trying to find her purpose, her unique path that she had abdicated for 20 years. And so I give her a support group in the second book, and it's called the Wine and Wine Group, the Wine and Wine Girls. So they try different kinds of wine and share the bottles with each other, and then they whine about their problems, but they always try to end on a win. So it's a very supportive group, and that's been so much fun because I can put all my favorite wines in there.
I like that. See, that makes a nice book club.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
I can coordinate.
That's true. I need to think about that. I need to work that in there for book clubs.
And you should.
Yeah,
Book
I
clubs
should.
are a lot of fun. I
Right.
enjoy book clubs. And these books would be great for book club because there's so much discussion that you can have surrounding the books.
Right. I mean, it's about the evolution of Olivia. And what has happened to her is a tragedy But also, you can look at it the other way. It has riveted her to look at the real damage she has caused herself in her life through, well, it's through her past and different things and how she was raised and different things that she went through. But she was unaware. So after the assault, she had to take a look at what was going on and make better choices and better decisions, which overall, she's just taken off. She's just taken off, and I love that about my character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do too. Well, the writers in the group always want to know, are you a pantser or a plotter? And in case you don't know, a pantser is somebody that writes by the seat of their pants. A plotter is somebody that writes a detailed outline. And writers usually fall into one of those two categories. Are you a pantser or a plotter?
It's interesting, I went to a writers' conference 2 weeks ago in Boca Raton, and Jeffrey Deaver, do y'all know who he is? Okay, he was our keynote. And so he talked about this, because everybody wants to know if you're a plotter or a pantser, all writers, it's a big topic. He spends 8 months working on an outline.
Wow.
I know, it makes me just kind of sick to my stomach to think about that. So, but I do try, because I would like to have a roadmap, because when you fly by the seat of your pants, you'll be 10 chapters in and you'll go, okay, this is really great to have this happen here, but what was the motivation? Why did that happen? I'm going to have to give some depth to this situation and explain it, which can get tedious and laborious, and you have to backtrack a lot if you're a pantser. So this time, I found out about this great app called Super Note Card, which is kind of the lazy man's way to do an outline, because it's just little note cards, and you put your chapters on that, and you can move them around, because scenes obviously sometimes need to go in different positions, and then you can put your research out to the side. So I did all that very carefully. I spent 3 weeks doing that, which was very hard for me, but I concentrated and I did it. Do you think I stuck to that outline? Absolutely not. No. And so I don't know. I've got the same theme, the same arc of the character, but I had cooler stuff happen on the way. So, you know, I look at it for reference, but for the most part, I'm just casting it out. So pantser, a hopeful outliner.
Well, and if you're like me, I of course started out as a pantser too, but when you get into a series, if you're not careful, you will paint yourself into corners. So
Yes.
It does require a little bit more of plotting.
I'm trying, it's hard.
So how many books do you think will be in the series? Have you thought that far down the road?
5. I've got a contract on the table for books 4 and 5.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Nice, excellent. So it's going to be 5. So what's your day like? Are you a morning writer, an evening writer? Do you write all day? Do you write a couple of hours every day? What's kind of your
I'm real
schedule?
structured. I write in the morning. I'm a morning person, and so I just have more creativity in the morning. So I try to get in my chair by 9 o'clock, and I'll write as long as it takes. My goal is 2,000 words a day.
Oh, nice.
What's your goal?
I don't do the word count thing. I just write until I
Okay.
drop.
Yeah, I'm trying
Or if
to.
I run out of coffee. When I run out of coffee, I'm done. So, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I tried to do the word count, and it made me anxious. It made me way too anxious. So I don't even look at a word count until I'm done with my first draft, and then I pull it up and I'm like, woo, add a novel.
yeah, and if I'm at 4,000 words, I'm so happy, and then I can take the next day off if I want to.
Yeah, see, the word count makes me, it stresses me.
No, I like goals, and I like deadlines when I have a little bit of time to meet them, but.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, so the first 9 to 4 hours, and if I'm on a roll, I'll just write through lunch,
Okay.
and until I stop.
Okay. So that's good. That's good. You know, I have a tendency to just ramble on all day. I guess we should ask if there's some questions too, you know? All right.
Do we have any wannabe authors out here thinking about writing?
This might be the first time we don't have any.
I want to write children's books.
Oh, nice.
I've taught school for 33 years. That's my goal.
That's awesome. That's a completely different footprint than this, but the basics are the same. The basics are the same, the structure. The publishers are looking, there are very strict rules that go with children's books. Have you looked at any publishers' websites yet to get a feel for that? She should talk to Anne Lilly. Yeah, Exactly.
Can I tell them your premise?
Yeah.
She wants to write about a honeybee who is allergic to pollen.
And it's such, see, half of selling a piece of work to an agent or a publisher is the idea. They're looking for a different idea. That is wonderful. I have a friend who did something similar with a suspense. She was in the medical field forever, so her protagonist was a surgeon that couldn't stand the sight of blood.
That's good.
Yeah, I got picked up right away. That's great. Well, I wish you luck on your journey.
So what do your kids think of your writing? Because I know you have children, they're grown now, I guess, but.
They've kind of grown. They do like my books. My daughter said, "Oh, thank God, Mom, it's cool, it's cool, it's good, it's not terrible." Yeah, because she's like, I don't know, 32 or something now, so that blesses me that she thinks it's cool.
Well, she wasn't embarrassed. So
Yes.
that's good.
So we take road trips, and I was the kind of mom who I'd start a story, and they'd groan, and I'd make them, okay, this is, I'd say, I don't know, 5 or 6 sentences, and okay, continue the story. And each one of them had, so there were collective groans in the story. But it was so wonderful to see what they'd come up with. Their imaginations were great, and my son, it always had a spaceship in it. It was so funny. It always had a spaceship. So anyway, have always been a storyteller, I guess.
Oh, well, that's good, yeah. So, well, that's what it takes, that's all, a novelist is a storyteller.
Right. But there are rules. You have to learn stuff.
Yes.
Anybody else? Yes?
Well, I just published my first book.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm learning through everyone's experiences now. Yeah. It's a nonfiction.
Have you tried some writing conferences?
Not yet.
That is the best place to learn.
Great.
It really is.
Well,
And a writing group.
And a writing group.
yeah.
Yep. Where do you live?
Charleston.
Charleston.
And there's lots there.
Yeah, Charleston is huge, but in Hilton Head, Robin and I are from Hilton Head. We have island writers now.
Well, it's already published, but I'm just trying to understand the marketing part, which, like you said, that's the challenging part.
Well, yes, it is. In nonfiction, that's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you have a publisher that's helping you at all?
Yes.
Okay. So they should have ideas that they give you for that.
Okay. But you're right. It's a partnership. So, and it's a very unique niche. It's never been explored. So.
What's your book? What is it?
It's called Semper Parents. It's parents. It's helping parents of Marines understand the journey that their child just got them into. And
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, especially right here, Paris Island.
Exactly.
You gotta
That's
get
why
in
I'm
between
here.
here.
It's a mecca. It's a mecca.
Yeah.
And parents don't cluster. So, the online social media experience is really, where we're gaining my strength. So,
I wish you the best for that.
Writing the book is the easy part.
it was a joy. It was a
Exactly.
labor of love.
The rest of it is the hard part, is getting it out there and getting it in books.
It's a balance of time,
It is.
because to get out and do the events takes time, plus you have to dig them up yourself as well.
Right.
And so it's not like some people do hire a publicist, but that's really expensive, and I have chosen not to do that, so.
Right.
So I'm thinking, I'm doing all this other stuff, I need to be writing, so it's balance.
Well, that's the hard part we talked about too, you feel like you have to have a platform and be on social media, but it's a time suck.
Yes.
And you find you spend all this time on social media, promote, but then you've got a contract pending on your next book.
That's
and
right.
When you can write.
But there's a time you just gotta quit, you've gotta lay that down and just write,
Yeah,
and whatever happens, I'm kinda there right now.
yes.
Yeah, I gotta turn my next manuscript into my editor at the end of September, and so I'm not even done with the first draft. So it's a year from start to finish for a book. I don't know but that's very typical, because it takes 6 months to write the first draft, another 6 weeks to finesse it, another 3 weeks to send it out to beta readers that will give you, hopefully, gentle but harsh criticism of what they found wrong with it from different perspectives, and then to clean it up again. By the time you have a book, you've edited it like times before it even gets to your editor.
Right, and then that's when the editor starts.
Yeah.
That's
So
true.
it's a labor of word love.
It is.
It is.
It is. Well, I think this whole career is basically a labor of love. It's,
Gotta love it, because if you didn't, you wouldn't stay.
No,
Yep.
no, you're right, you're right.
Yeah, my husband doesn't read. And so he's like, I don't even understand why you're doing this. And I drag him to conferences, and he doesn't like to talk to writers very much. And but he can talk sports, so.
Sounds like my husband. Except for my husband
We
reads,
should get
but
them
he-
together.
Yeah, but he will not do the writing.
So perhaps both of you could answer this. Could you talk a little bit about why you have gravitated to this particular genre? Especially you, Kerry. I mean, with Dana, there's an obvious connection to what you chose, but why aren't you a poet? Why aren't you writing nonfiction? Why aren't you writing cozy mystery? You know, why this? What happened?
I think there's a really dark streak in me.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, I think, like I was telling everyone, I've been through some emotional tough times and some relational tough times, and seeing the grittier side of life. And I learned to handle that with kind of a dark humor. And I tried, I was telling Dana, I read romances when I was younger. As an adult, I gravitated towards suspense. There just is always a crime in my book. There's always a big, huge emotional pit that my protagonist falls into and has to claw her way out of. I just do. So,
All right.
that's kind of an obtuse answer, but there you go.
No, I think.
Well, I think you tend to write what you want to read. And so you enjoy the suspense, you enjoy the mysteries, and so it's natural.
And the murders and the brains on the floor.
You do have a dark streak. I'm a little worried about that.
Brains on the floor is very big.
But just because you write in one genre doesn't mean you can't switch.
No,
to-
I could switch, but I can't do fluffy things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do you have any aspirations of writing something besides suspense mystery?
I would look at women's fiction, but it would be very serious women's fiction. It wouldn't be a Dorothea Benton Frank book. I'll just put it that way. It would be
Something a little darker.
yeah. And then I would just have to make it a suspense. So I'm not sure. I'm really not
He's
sure.
still-
I think it might just gravitate. So.
Well, I know in my situation, it was write what you know, so, you know, I spent 21 years as an FBI agent, so naturally, I would write a series about a female FBI agent. So that's kind of how the series, but my next book is a different genre, so I am switching genres for my next book.
Whoa.
Found that very difficult, because it keeps coming back to my editor with, you know, so many comments. It's not
Because you're not
much.
used to the genre.
Right.
You're not used to the boundaries for that genre.
Exactly.
I mean, I think it would be tough.
Everything was plot driven before, now it's character driven, and it's gotta be deeper.
I would only do it if I had some of these very successful under my belt and could depart. And, you know,
I think a lot of
not
people are
still be
scared.
building that. I would do it under a different name.
So after 5, you could.
No,
Switching genres is terrifying.
I'm not empty of suspense yet.
Yes, that's good, yeah. Any other questions? No, who's the
Okay, what time is it?
Up 65, we got time.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about how you started writing. I mean, you came out, you obviously had a long, successful career, but what made you sit down one day and say, I'm gonna write suspense. I'm gonna do it, I'm just gonna do it.
Well,
Was
you
there
know,
that?
I think everybody starts out writing their life story. I mean, I just sat down one day when I was, I don't know, 2 or 3 decades ago or something, and just pounded something out on a computer, and it just felt good. I didn't really have time. I was a single parent for a long time, so I didn't have time to think about writing, because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money to go to all the conferences. It's very comprehensive until I was retired from my job to do it at all. So, but I think a love of reading, like Pat Conroy's mom, to sing, and she always dragged me to the library when we were an Air Force family, so we went all over the place, lived in different places, and on the base, they had libraries, and we'd go home with stacks of 6 books, and I would just lay on the couch all afternoon and read the books. I just developed a love of words, and I would read with a dictionary by my side, even when I was really young, to look up the words. Were you like that too? She's nodding her head. There's a love of words in some people. They're just, and when I write, I have the thesaurus open as I write.
I do the same thing, yeah.
Because I gotta just get the right word for
And that's the most
something.
frustrating thing when it's right on the tip of your tongue, but you can't get that like perfect word.
Yep.
That to me will
You
drive
gotta
me
be a
crazy.
poet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do y'all like to read? What is your genre? You must like suspense since you came here. Yeah, so what are some favorite authors?
I've been reading a lot of Lisa Jewell.
Okay.
She's a British author. Brits.
They have it on suspense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Louise Jensen as well is another wonderful one.
It is about the British because the television shows are very good and very suspenseful too.
They're just dark. They've got a dark thread. And they do, you know, like the wry wit of the Brits. They're just something about their culture that plants that little twistedness in them. And I wish I had it. I have a little bit of it.
Well, my lovely wife sitting next to me is a Brit, and so she
Yeah.
has it.
Yeah.
Can you relate?
Yeah.
Yes. No, it is. It's a different, culturally, it's a different kind of humor there. And it's, yeah, a little bit dark. And, I mean, it even goes back to Sherlock Holmes. You know, it's always
Yes.
been about mysteries and the Jack the Ripper and things like that. So, yeah, I love all things.
And all that rain over there. All that dark, tumultuous cloud.
Tumultuous that we've had all month here.
Well, they're having heat here now.
They're having the heat now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel it.
Moving around, because you said you were from a military family, the moving around, did that help shape some of your thoughts and feelings when you write? Because obviously you had a little bit different background than if you had lived in one town your whole life.
I think that it raised my getting bored quotient. I get bored easily. So like in my books, I have 2 or 3 points of view. People are looking at Olivia through their eyes, and then Olivia is Olivia, but also the other people have a take on her as well, and her choices and what she's doing. And it's hard for me to write a book with just one person throughout telling the whole story. I find that one dimensional. And so I like to have other perspectives. So I'm trying to kind of perfect that. But I do think, because I'm used to moving got used to moving every 2 years, even now I've moved all over the place, and it's just something that I guess feels familiar. And so I just get bored easily.
Okay.
Like FBI agents.
Moved around quite a bit.
Yes,
so.
yes.
But I'm happy to say I am not going anywhere anytime.
Me either. I left
Stayed in
Hilton
the
Head.
country.
We've been in Hilton Head for 7 years. Yes.
So I'm wondering, because you said that every time you moved, your mom found a library, was that kind of like your home port of experience where you felt like that was your comfort zone? You know, some kids, when they move around so much, they find it through sports, or they find it through their music. They find their people. Do you think that you found your place when you were reading? Or
I think that's a very intuitive statement. I think probably so.
Yeah.
Because I always felt safe in a library. I still feel safe in a library. If there's not a mean library.
Yeah.
No, but I do love libraries, and it very well could have, because I have such fond memories of that.
Yeah.
And we would all afternoon, on those Saturday afternoons or Sundays, I can't remember now, we would just read.
And it was always a place that was the same every place you moved, so it was kind of like that was your space. Well, I'm glad I could
Good point.
bring that up
Yes.
to you.
Yeah,
That's
well, there's a lot of isolation in being a military dependent.
Yeah.
So
That's true. It
Being
never
in
had
a
any
corner with
roots.
a book
Yeah.
Exactly.
is a very
You-
comfortable place.
Yeah, you could take Ramona with you, you know, it's like your friend or something, yeah.
Mhm.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
As a military brat, as you would call yourself maybe, did you live throughout the United States, or were you mainly here in the southern part, like Pat Conroy was, or?
Dad was Air Force, and so I was born in Germany, and then we lived in New York, Long Island, and I was real young then. And then we lived in Japan, Sawa, and then we lived in Omaha, Nebraska, because he had family there and he asked for that assignment. And he eventually retired when I was a teenager in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh,
Yeah,
Little Rock.
been there.
Yeah. That's where I raised my kids,
Yeah.
Little Rock. And then I met my husband and we started traveling all over again.
So what brought you to Hilton Head?
Well, the last place we lived was Baltimore. Anybody familiar with Baltimore?
Very,
Okay. Well, the Eastern Shore.
yeah.
Okay. Well, when you live in Little Rock, Arkansas, you go to the Gulf Coast in Florida to vacation. When we saw the Eastern Shore, we had a heart attack. Because to us, that wasn't a beach. That was just a clustered bunch of humanity on rocks.
You
And
should
the
have tried
water
a
was
Jersey
so
Shore.
cold. We've never been in the water.
Yeah.
So we were mortified, and so we would stay on the coast. And I had a professor in college who was a tennis pro in Hilton Head back in the 70s, and I was like, oh, I just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And he had a Volkswagen thing, and he had an afro. It was just very cool. And so I was in a situation in Baltimore where you could just go down this scenic Highway 1 and end up in Hilton Head. So we did that to not go to the Eastern Shore. And we went once, and then we came again the next year, and that was it for me. Riding bikes through sea pines with the live oaks and the Spanish moss, and I just prayed. I said, Lord, here is where I need to be. This is heaven. And we've been here ever since. I mean, we listed our house. It had 44 showings in a month.
Oh, boy.
And I did that with 3 cats. So I have to take the cats out every time. Nobody wants to see a litter box. So that was it. I mean, we love it here. You couldn't bomb me out of the place.
Once the love country gets in your blood.
I know. Yes, I used to think the marshes were swamps. Well, you do when you come down here. I had everybody go, ooh, how do you handle the bugs and all that stuff. And the first 2 years, I was like, I don't know. But then I learned the ecological significance. I learned about Spartina grass. I learned it, so I have grown to love the marsh. And now I have a marsh in my backyard. That's my view. Yeah.
So what advice would you give any writers that might be in the room or any writers watching? What advice would you give?
One, go to writing conferences. Just find them, they're everywhere. And sit there and listen and learn. Take notes, listen and learn, and meet people. Because contacts are so important. 2, have a good idea. Have a good idea. That's it. An agent is going to love you if you've got a good idea. The writing is secondary to the idea. Just saying. They are not looking for flowery words. They're not looking for a perfect paragraph. I mean, you have to be able to write, obviously, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You have a good idea, they're going to help you with all the rest of that stuff. So that's what sells it. And 3, when you do make these contacts, I would say get their cards, get their emails, and utilize them. Put them in a database. Reach out to them. And writers are the most generous people I've ever met. They are so happy to pull you up because they were where you are at one time. Robin knows. And so don't be afraid to ask them for help. Don't be afraid to ask them the dumbest question you can think of because they love bringing people up alongside.
No, that's great advice. I remember my first writing conference, I almost left because I sat down and I didn't know what anybody was talking about. The speaker was up there and they were throwing out terms. I didn't know anything that they were even talking about. And so we
weird.
sat down, and later he says, "What do you have questions? What do you not understand?" And I'm like, everything. I don't know this stuff. And so, but yeah, writers' conference are the best places to meet people and make those connections. And don't let it intimidate you. I almost walked out and I don't know what would happen if I
Right,
would've-
and you can just sit there and soak it in, or you can go meet people, and I mean, you don't have to feel any pressure whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, once you become a writer, they want you on every panel that they have, so. Yeah, so you have to watch that.
And read good books, I would have to say too, you know.
Oh, yes,
Reading
yes.
good books
You
makes
have
a
to keep
better
reading.
writer.
Keep learning the craft. Yeah, the more you read, the more you learn. The more you write, the better you get. Just gotta do it.
True too. Right, do you write every day?
Yeah, unless, there's something prohibitive, a kid has a problem or whatever. There are things that take priority, but I try to, absolutely. I try not to write on the weekends.
Okay.
Yeah, it's important, I think, as a writer to have a break, because you can fry your brain.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously.
Mine's been fried.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? No? I'm not sure what
I
time
think
it is.
I've worn out my personal anecdotes.
Okay.
You just buy some books then.
There we go, we'll just open up the bookstore. How about that?
Okay.